The day felt heavy, like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. I was sitting in the back of the courtroom, waiting for my turn to testify. My name is Rachel, and I've been working for the past few months as a legal assistant. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, and I liked helping people who needed it most. Today, however, was different. Today, I wasn't just here to watch. Today I was sitting in the back because of someone else. Her name was Maya, a 17-year-old black teen from a rough neighborhood. She had been arrested for something I knew deep down she hadn't done. Maya's parents were both working multiple jobs, just trying to make ends meet. I could see it in their tired faces. So when Maya's case came up, I wasn't just a spectator. I was rooting for her, quietly, because I knew what it felt like to be judged by things that had nothing to do with your heart or your character. The judge was an older man, balding, stern. You could feel the arrogance radiating off him. The kind of guy who thinks he's untouchable, the kind of guy who doesn't bother listening to the stories behind the faces. He stared at Maya like she was just another teenager who'd gotten in trouble, probably assumed she'd have no real defense. "Maya Johnson," he called out in a dismissive tone. Maya stood up, and I couldn't help but notice how small she looked in that big, intimidating courtroom. She was dressed simply, nothing fancy, just a clean blouse and some jeans, but there was something in the way she held herself. It was calm, collected. Unlike the judge, I felt like there was something more to her. Something big, something powerful. "Are you sure you have a lawyer?" the judge asked, raising an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. Maya didn't flinch. "Yes, Your Honor. I'm representing myself." A few heads turned in the courtroom. A teen girl representing herself? People started whispering. The judge, though, just chuckled. "I'm sure you'll do fine," he said sarcastically. "Let's get this over with. I'm sure your defense is just as impressive as your choice of clothing." I could see Maya's jaw tighten, but she didn't say anything. She just nodded, walking confidently to the stand. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady, but I could tell it was more than just the words that were going to change this courtroom. Something about Maya's presence was about to surprise everyone in that room. Maya stood there, facing the judge, her eyes steady and focused. I had never seen anyone so calm in such a tense situation. Most people would have been nervous, maybe stammering or glancing around, looking for reassurance. But Maya was different. She didn't look scared, even when the judge made his condescending comments. "Your Honor," she started, her voice firm yet gentle. "I want to begin by stating that I'm innocent of these charges. I've been falsely accused and I'm here to prove it." The judge barely glanced at her, scribbling something down on his notes. Yes, we'll see about that. I'm sure you're going to tell us your side of the story, but let's not waste time, all right?" It was as if he didn't even think she could stand up to him. But Maya, she wasn't rattled. Instead, she went into her defense calmly, explaining the facts, the inconsistencies in the witness testimony, and how the evidence didn't match the allegations against her. She spoke with such precision, each word carefully chosen, but delivered as if she had done this 1,000 times before. The room was silent, except for the sound of her voice, and even the judge seemed to stop his dismissive behavior for a moment. He glanced up at her with a slight frown, though he quickly masked it. "I see you've been reading some law books," he said with a smirk. "But let me remind you, young lady, this is the real world. You're not going to win by spouting off legal jargon." Maya didn't flinch at the insult. She simply took a deep breath, then calmly replied, "I may not be a lawyer, but I understand what's right, and I understand what's wrong. I understand how to fight for justice." Her words weren't just words, they were a statement. I could feel the energy in the room shift. People were starting to pay attention, including the judge, who seemed to be losing a bit of his smugness. Then, Maya did something I didn't expect. She pulled out a thick file, not from a briefcase, but from a folder she had carried with her. I hadn't noticed it before. She opened it slowly, revealing page after page of legal documents, evidence, and case law that supported her innocence. "I've reviewed every detail of my case, Your Honor," she said. "I've studied the law and I'm prepared to present the facts that will prove I did not commit this crime. If you allow me, I'll show you how it all fits together." The room went quiet. I could see the judge's expression shift slightly. He looked at the file, then back at Maya. For the first time, he seemed unsure, like maybe this wasn't going to be as easy as he thought. There was a strange stillness in the air. The judge, who moments ago had been dismissive, now sat a little straighter, eyeing the file Maya had laid out in front of her. I could see the others in the courtroom watching, some with disbelief, others with curiosity. It was like they were all waiting for something. Waiting for the moment when Maya would either prove them wrong or confirm their doubts. The judge cleared his throat and leaned forward, his gaze hardening. "Go ahead then. Let's see what you've got, but don't expect me to go easy on you just because you can read a law book." Maya didn't respond to his provocation. She simply nodded and began flipping through the pages of her file, speaking with a quiet confidence that seemed to make everyone listen a little harder. "I've reviewed the surveillance footage from the night of the incident," she said, "and it shows that I was nowhere near the scene. The prosecution claims I was in a particular location at a particular time, but the video evidence clearly contradicts that. Here, you can see the timestamp, Your Honor. And you can see where I was standing when the crime was alleged to have taken place." She pointed to the screen, and I could tell that even the judge was paying attention now. His earlier smugness was starting to fade, replaced by something else, a flicker of uncertainty. Maya went on, presenting piece after piece of evidence, each one more convincing than the last. She wasn't just throwing out legal terms or confusing jargon. She was telling a story, her story, and backing it up with facts, with proof. She didn't need to shout or get angry, she simply stood tall and spoke the truth. I watched as the judge flipped through the documents in front of him, his face growing more and more serious. At one point he even paused, his fingers hovering over one of the pages, as if he was reading it again, trying to understand it better. The courtroom was so quiet now, you could almost hear the sound of people holding their breath. Then, there was a long pause. The judge sat back in his chair looking at Maya, and for the first time I saw something I hadn't expected: respect. "Miss Johnson," he said, his voice softer than before. "I must admit, I didn't expect this. I didn't think you were capable of any of this." Maya smiled, but it wasn't an arrogant smile. It was one of quiet satisfaction, like she knew she had proven a point, not just to the judge, but to everyone in that room. "I know the law, Your Honor," she said simply. "And I know that no one should ever be judged based on their age or appearance. Justice isn't about who you are, it's about what's right." The judge fell silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You've made a strong case. I'll review the evidence, and I'll consider everything you've presented here." For the first time, Maya wasn't just a teenage girl in his courtroom. She was a force to be reckoned with. The judge, once so condescending, now seemed to acknowledge that he had underestimated her. And I could see the courtroom shifting too. The people who had been whispering before, unsure of her, were now watching her with a new kind of respect. The room felt different now. The tension that had hung thick in the air before was slowly lifting, replaced by something lighter, something like hope. People were watching Maya, truly seeing her for the first time. And in that moment, I realized that Maya wasn't just defending herself against false accusations. She was fighting for something bigger. She was showing everyone in that room what real strength looked like, what it meant to not let others define your worth. I couldn't help but admire her as I watched her stand tall, still composed and calm, despite everything that had happened. She had turned the tables, but she didn't act like it. She was humble, just as she had been when she first walked in, but now there was a quiet power in her eyes. The judge sat at his desk, flipping through the pages Maya had presented, his face unreadable. He didn't say anything for what felt like an eternity. But finally, after what seemed like the longest pause, he stood up. His voice when he spoke was no longer mocking or dismissive. It was thoughtful, almost respectful. "Miss Johnson," he began, his eyes meeting hers, "you've done something today that I didn't think was possible. You've shown me that I was wrong, about you, and about the way I've been treating cases like yours. This court will take everything you've presented into account." For the first time, Maya's expression softened, but she didn't say anything. She simply nodded, waiting for him to continue. The judge cleared his throat. Based on the evidence, and after further review, I find that the charges against you are unwarranted. I am dismissing the case against you." A gasp echoed through the courtroom. The relief I felt in that moment was overwhelming, and I saw that Maya's parents, who had been sitting quietly, praying for this outcome, could barely hold back their tears. They stood up, holding each other, while Maya's expression remained calm, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips. "I knew it," I whispered to myself, watching her. "I knew she had it in her all along." The judge turned to address the court again. But this time, his tone was different. He wasn't just talking to Maya, he was addressing all of us. "Let this be a reminder that we must never judge someone based on their appearance, their age, or their background. Maya Johnson has shown us that determination, intelligence, and justice are what truly matter." Maya's parents rushed to her side, enveloping her in a tight hug. She had done it. She had proven them all wrong. But more than that, she had given everyone in that room a lesson in strength, in resilience, and in the power of truth. The courtroom was buzzing now, but the energy had completely shifted. There was no more judgment or skepticism, only admiration. Maya stood there with her parents, her head held high, surrounded by well-wishers who had once doubted her. Even the people who had been whispering behind her back now came up to congratulate her. I watched Maya, still in disbelief. She had done something no one expected, not even the judge. It wasn't just about winning the case, it was about standing up, about showing the world that being underestimated doesn't define you. When the proceedings wrapped up and the crowd began to leave, I caught up with Maya and her parents outside the courtroom. Her mother was wiping away tears, her father beaming with pride, but Maya, as always, remained composed. "Miss Johnson," I said, stepping forward. She turned to me with a smile, but it wasn't just a polite one, it was warm, genuine. I could see that she was still taking it all in, still processing the moment. "You did it," I said, my voice full of awe. "You were incredible in there. I've never seen anyone handle something like that so calmly, so powerfully." Maya shrugged modestly. "I just had to fight for what's right," she said. "No one else was going to do it for me." Her words struck me. It was simple, but so true. Maya had done more than just prove her innocence. She had stood up for herself in a way that inspired everyone around her. The way she had handled herself, facing down the judge, calmly presenting her case, and showing that being underestimated doesn't mean you can't fight back, was something I would never forget. "You're going to go far," I said, meaning it from the bottom of my heart. "You have a gift, a real one." Maya looked at me for a long moment, her eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you," she said quietly, but there was something in her voice that made me feel like she wasn't just thanking me for my words. She was thanking me for believing in her when no one else did. As she walked away with her family, I couldn't help but think about how things had played out. What had started as a courtroom filled with judgment and condescension had turned into a powerful moment of truth. Maya had proven that no one's story should be written for them based on assumptions. She had rewritten her own story, and in doing so, she had left a mark on everyone who had witnessed her fight. And as I watched her disappear into the distance, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning for her. Maya Johnson was going to change the world. And today, she had already started. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this story. If it inspired you, or made you think differently about the power of standing up for what's right, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on more amazing stories. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. And if you know someone who would love this story, share it with them. Thanks for being here and for supporting the channel. I can't wait to bring you more.